This extraordinary institution was founded 250 years ago to care for the poorest people in London. Here in the East End of London in Victorian times, there was poverty, overcrowding and prostitution. The London Hospital spans some of the greatest breakthroughs in medical history. It's been totally abandoned since 2012, and it's about to be developed into a new headquarters for Tower Hamlets Council. This is my last chance to uncover its secrets.
Slides. Some of these show facial deformities. These are obviously taken for good medical purposes.
Such disfigurement must be challenging to live with. But in Victorian Britain, those who are malformed might live as outcasts, rejected by family, friends and society. The London couldn't afford to admit residential patients, but it became home for a man whose deformity was thought so horrific that he hid his face from the world. The Elephant Man, suffering from terrible deformities, was displayed in public, from which he made a living. But he was in fact a man with a name, Joseph Merrick. He was exhibited in 1884 at the Pathological Society of London by a surgeon at this hospital, Frederick Treves. And when 2 years later Merrick was found collapsed, the discovery of Treves's calling card in his pocket caused him to be brought to this hospital, to an attic room that would become his sanctuary.
I see Joseph Merrick shuffling up and down the corridors, looking for solitude.
Biographer Joanne Mungovin comes from Merrick's home city of Leicester. She decided to write about Joseph after discovering that she was related to Tom Norman, the showman who exhibited the Elephant Man at a Whitechapel freak show.
He was completely unique.
A gentle gentleman.
There's never been anyone like him.
There were thousands of people coming through this hospital each year. For Merrick to spend this long period, 4 years here, must have been extremely unusual. How was it managed?
It was incredibly unusual. This was a hospital to cure people. It was not a hospital for incurables. So Frederick Treves spoke to the chairman of the London Hospital, Francis Cargon, who actually wrote a letter to the Times asking for people to help actually fund him. And they managed to get about £250, which was an extraordinary amount of money to actually keep him here in this hospital in Whitechapel.
Joanne has brought some artefacts from the Royal London Museum.
That is an extraordinary object, isn't it? That is the very hat that he wore, and look at the size of it. It immediately brings home to you the dimension of his deformity.
Oh, it does indeed. I think his head was about 38 inches in diameter.
And this is a veil.
He wore the cap, and then underneath it's the veil, because if you look further down, you can see the little pillar box slits where his eyes would have gone through.
And this was because it was felt that he was just so hideous that he couldn't be shown to ordinary people. Was Frederick Treves doing medical work with Merrick?
Yes, he was. He was using him as a medical specimen. This is an actual illustration of Joseph Merrick in this book, which was printed in about 1885. Here we can actually see Joseph's deformities on his right-hand side.
So what you can see here, obviously, is this very distended right arm. This side of the body is normal.
It is. Frederick Treves referred to it as very feminine, and it was about the same size as a 12-year-old girl.
And it's just generically entitled A Case of Congenital Deformity.
That's right, it is, yeah.
What else have you brought to show us?
This is a copy of the only surviving letter that we have that Joseph Merrick wrote. We don't know whether Joseph was right or left-handed, but he was an educated man and he had the most beautiful writing. It was written to a lady called Lila Manturin, a benefactor.
I saw Mr. Treves on Sunday. He said I was to give his best respects to you.
As you see, it's signed, yours truly, Joseph Merrick, London Hospital, Whitechapel.
I must say that is really unexpected to me. I had no idea that he was able to read and write.
It's absolutely beautiful.
I've discovered that inside the broken body of the Elephant Man there was a strong intelligence and even delicacy. At a time when the public were paying to gawp at disabled people, the London Hospital offered him sanctuary. a kindness well ahead of its time that illustrates its commitment to serve all. When Joseph Merrick, the Elephant Man, died at the age of 27, his illness was still a mystery. The London hospital has kept his skeleton for over a century.
When Merrick first came into the hospital, one of the main quests was to try and fully understand what was wrong with him.
Professor Richard Trembleth from King's College London is a geneticist working to uncover the nature of Merrick's illness.
It's the over 100-year mystery. My predecessors have been considering this over the whole of that time.
Richard has brought the only existing replica of Joseph Merrick's skeleton. Is there any hope today that we can find out what was wrong with Merrick?
One of the things that's very clear is that this must have been a genetic condition, an abnormality of the DNA. And of course, there have been very significant advances in our ability to actually extract material that allows us to read the genetic code.
If you did intervene with Merrick's skeleton, what would you actually have to do? I mean, is it a kind of big operation?
Well, let me just show you, if I may. This is a bone from, actually it's a female whose skeleton was also in the museum, the Royal London.
You've made this big hole here, have you?
This is in our efforts to see whether we can extract DNA of sufficient quantity and quality from the skeleton in order to then be able to read that DNA. We obviously are trying to perfect the technique here before our efforts on the skeleton of Merrick, because, of course, that's quite damaging, and we want to make sure we preserve the skeleton in every way we possibly can.
Merrick really is quite a figure in the history of this hospital.
Oh, without any question. You may know amongst those who have been fascinated, included Michael Jackson. He would come and spend time on his own, sitting next to the skeleton, obviously contemplating with Merrick.
It might seem macabre that the Elephant Man's skeleton is still kept in the London hospital. But if doctors finally crack the genetic code locked inside his bones, Joseph can help patients today.